Thank you, Mia, for responding. Okay, so this is semi-exciting. I at least heard some of students in the class talking about having a final project exciting. Anyway, it could be exciting and it could be work. So this is a very brief summary. It's, to some extent, it's not super surprised, right, what the final project is based on the title of the class. It's inclusive design with tangible and physical morphing materials. And this is a moment you feel free to ask any questions. And there are a lot of flexibilities. So for topic wise, I thought about it and I think it's a good idea to keep it open. So, but each team, you are still supposed to work on one project, right? Usually it's made of 3 team members and you wanna basically choose the context and also the topic and also the technique / materials you wanna use for the final project. We'll try to help as much as we can with me and also the instructor teams in terms of the implementation detail. So for our topic, there was always this sort of default topic, classic topic related to wearables. And you remember Leah gave a very first lecture on wearables and fabrics, and we kept talking about and coming back to it multiple times over the class. And I also placed a few example topics just to give you guys some more clues. Connected could be an interesting topic. You know, there are a lot of examples using tangible interfaces and physical haptic devices to better forge connection in a disconnected world. That is related to how people being isolated over the pandemic period, and it could also to do with the new living style and ways of socialization in a VR or AR environment. So some of you guys are also very interested in slightly uncommon morphing materials like food, and also some of the other more like natural context. And I know there are a handful of architects in our class. If you guys are more interested in construction materials like wood and more thinking of, you know, environmental design context, for example, like a responsive facade of some sort, I think those could well lie within the scope of the class as well. And in terms of materials, I think, again, you see I all have a little bit dot at the end. So it does means you could definitely leverage all the knowledge we shared in the classroom, but if you have other alternative options, you can feel free to use them too. You, for example, you're in a big fan of electronic motors or some vibrator, piezo vibrators. Those things we did not mention in the class is just because they are quite common. Standard IoT components, but you are very welcome to sort of leverage those as well, especially if you're thinking of a highly programmable application context. Using motors might be able to give you a lot more flexibility on that end. But if you're thinking about something, you know, injectable or natural or like soft and wearable, then more of the kind of analog morphing materials will be better candidate. I do think, you know, concept goes first. We want to work on something novel and hopefully, right, useful, creative, inspiring, and then we can try to think about what are the right type of actuating materials we can use. And we'll be with you along the way. And a lot of my slides are a little bit kind of a reminder, just because we talk about some of the high level concept at the beginning of the early half of the class. Then we went through like a bunch of lab sessions. They are a little bit more technical. I would love to go back just at this moment, since you guys started to decide what is the final project is, to go back to a bit of the earlier days concepts we discussed. So it's important in your final project, you not only focusing on the action part. The action is basically the physical material, right? Like physical input and what is the shape changing behavior and all those. But you should go beyond that and also think about what is the situation, who is the person you are designing this for, and also how the artifacts is affecting the experiences or fulfilling the needs of the person. And remember the very first question Leah asked, for who, in what situation, it is a what that does what, when what. And people had been kind of using this format to ask questions for different of your smaller lab assignment. So it's a good idea to bring this question back when your team is brainstorming, because we definitely want a human aspect. And I will talk a little bit more about that, but for this moment, I would also want to just remind you guys again, what is the final deliverables? So in the next 3 weeks-ish, we will find one class section to basically invite all teams to give a short presentation. We have not decided how many teams at this very moment, but very soon. I'm hoping by the end of today's class. So the presentation could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes. This depends on, again, the numbers of teams, but there will be a semi-formal final presentation. Again, format, whether it's publicized among the whole school of computer science or the whole school, or it's more of a closed in-classroom presentation with only like 30 of us. That has not been decided fully yet. Depends on the pandemic situations and stuff. But you consider this as a formal pitch of the glamorous end result of your creation. We mentioned we also would love to see functional prototype and live demo. So far, in some of our lab sessions, we kind of already captured the spirit. So the instructors coming in, right, show what they did, show and tell, people see it. I'm imagining an interactive session where people can basically enjoy seeing each and other's creation. So you are supposed to have functional or semi-functional demos for that session. And lastly, this might be a little bit special for folks who maybe pretty junior in your academic life. So we are requesting a submission of a Chi extended format paper. And it's of course up to each team whether you actually want to submit it. So the deadline is September, mid-September-ish. And it is, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the class, is one of the major, actually the biggest conference in human-computer interaction field. If you are remotely interested in understanding the field or graduate school or publishing, this could be a great practice. And I very much believe that this benefits you. Say, if you want to apply for a PhD, it's very important to have some sort of publications in your CV. So I did not show last time when I talk about this, the example. This is actually my own work. Of course, within a large team, it's a team, but it's a very similar situation. So basically, it was my first year at Media Lab, and we took a class called Tangible Interface from my advisor, Hiroshi Ishii, and there was a final project. So you can tell we have 5 team members. It was too big a team, I think, now thinking about it. But anyway, so this was the final project. It wasn't a requirement to make a web page. We did it anyway, but it was a sort of a tangible game. It is about promoting connectivity through, like flying a virtual kite, but with the physical rope, with haptic feedback, etc. So kids can make friends across the whole globe, across the world. So there are different kinds of physical games. Now looking at it, I think the graphic and everything just looks extremely like happy, but a little bit it could be improved. But anyway, it was almost 10 years ago. We had a lot of fun. But my point is so so these ended up in a, so it was as part of the final assignment, we had to work on this extended format paper. So this is what we wrote, and I just want to show you guys so you can calibrate how much of a writing task we're talking about and in which flavor. And these are all linked again on the slides deck. Feel free to take a look. My sense is this is very durable for a 3-person team. So basically, it's, you know, just a basic concept. What is the game? What is the technique? And some pictures of how the system works. And, you know, some descriptions related to the core feature. Like I said, the implementation detail. And then some articulation of the, you know, like the related work and also potential future work. With a very minimum reference. So this is a very good format for entry-level paper writer, I would say. But it definitely gets you trained to think in a kind of a logical academic way when you articulate a project of your own. Luckily, you all got some sort of basically travel grants you could potentially apply for as CMU graduate student or undergrad students. So, but irrelevant of whether you are interested in submitting it or not, yeah, this is kind of one of the major deliverables for the final project as well. And feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. So yeah, if not, I continue. So the inclusive design aspect, because it's so important, is like core of the class, right? I wanna just bring up again some of the old slides. I do encourage your team, when you brainstorm the concepts you wanna focus on, think about these aspects. Remember this graphic I showed many times, and I really love it. It was created by Microsoft Design. And we talk about, right, the mismatch could be permanent. That's a lot to do with, you know, traditional definition sense disability, but also a lot to do with broader contexts for temporary and situational mismatch. Somebody got pregnant, right? Somebody is too short when this person is trying to reach up something high. So those are also mismatched from this environment. And also think about the context. Again, these were old slides, but if you are kind of running out of idea, I think definitely, right, that's the whole spirit of inclusive design, is to go beyond our own situation. Because I'm kind of having a boring life nowadays, right? Come to the classroom and come to my office in the lab, and I'm at home. If I want to design something creative with morphing matter for myself, I might be limited. So, but if I think a little bit broader, maybe it's for my mom, for her cooking class, or when my mom is taking care of my grandma, for example, you suddenly started to have more enriched scenarios you can find solutions for. And also thinking about basically, you know, social context, health concept, learning context. And they are simple graphics, but definitely give you some kind of interesting ideas. And again, we talk about, right, thinking of different conditions and also thinking of different physical context. I found scenarios like a city center or in a bus or in a wild or in a library aren't common in students' sort of assignments. So when we ask students to just think about something, and often it results in at home or in an office, because that's where we live. But kind of try to think a little broadly sometimes can also give you guys inspiration during the brainstorming sessions. And I already mentioned, right, social context. Think about whether this is, you know, alone and with friends are commonly seen when people brainstorm. But in a crowd is kind of interesting. Thinking this is in, I don't know, in a department store, or if this is literally at the, you know, like a cross of a Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, or sometimes somewhere Tokyo. that, or airport, for example, at the junction area, that might be interesting scenarios, again, where some of those tangible and morphing stuff could be put in good use. When, whom, where, and with whom. Just keep this in mind when you brainstorm. And this is what I said, it's kind of related. You know, people talk about digital interface being adaptive, which is good because adaptive means you can tailor the interface to different people. So that makes digital material, digital interface, and digital service inclusive. And luckily, if now we can make physical objects not static anymore, then physical artifacts can be adaptive to different users. So in that sense, maybe, you know, your system is not designed for a single group of user, a single situation. It's designed for multiple situations, multiple different kinds of user. Maybe it's a chair, depends on who sits on, short, tall, pregnant, elderly, younger. They change their ergonomics. So in that sense, it is not a single user group, right? There are multiple. So being adaptive inherently is being inclusive. So please keep that in mind when you think about the final design concepts as well. And related to teaming, again, before we send you guys to break up rooms, or we wanna again summarize what the final project really includes. So it's the contact user with mismatch when you define the idea. And we would start to do some initial sketches, but this is not really assignment. It just, you know, when you guys brainstorm, try to keep this in mind. If you're inspired, and try to just do some doodling sketches. It really is not about the format. These are all ways to facilitate you thinking through the problems. But this is, I think, important criteria. So you might be thinking, hey, we've already been brainstorming all sorts of ideas during our lab assignment. What's the difference? So the difference is basically better. It should be better because you have 3 weeks instead of 3 minutes, and you will have 3 person for a lot of the teams. So it should be more complete in concept. We'll go through some of the basically smaller assignments to help you to think in a more detailed and sophisticated way. So for example, remember we talked about morphing hairband for workshop safety. So we were saying somebody's long hair could get entangled in a digital machine. So it's a very good safety caution to tie your hair back, but somebody forgot. So whether you can have a hairband to sort of, you know, automatically tie your hair up before you operating the machine. So that was what I so-called an idea, a sparkling idea coming from a lab session. But now if you're interested in the context of shop safety, right, as your final project, then you wanna think about this more broadly. So there, on top of my head, there are 2 ways to think about it. You focus on a hairband, but you ask yourself how the hairband can do multiple things. Maybe it is about, you know, again, it is about tying your hair automatically before you operating a machine, but also maybe it's reminding yourself gently, right, when the timing is up, or when the laser cutter is on fire, or when you try to basically leave the laser cutter working, and you yourself go to another room for some other stuff. The hairband will sort of create a haptic force to pull you back into the room. I don't know, some of those ideas aren't good, but just give you an example. So the hairband is supposed to do multiple things, and it should supposed to solve multiple problems within the context of workshop safety. And of course, you could also think about, hey, I'm interested in workshop safety. Let's think about all the possible, you know, places where we can basically infuse technology to address the problem. Maybe that is hairband plus wearable wristband plus a smart caliber of some sort that can wrap around and tell you dimensions or whatever, or that is smart, you know, something besides the like an actuator besides your CNC machine. So if your head is going too close by, gonna like push yourself back. So then you can think about multiple sort of smaller artifacts distributed in the shop environment to address the safety concerns as well. So one way to be a bit more comprehensive in the way of thinking is to create a so-called user journey map. So situate this person in the environment, thinking about, you know, thinking about the context both temporally and spatially. And again, you don't need to be too worried about it at this very moment. We'll have some smaller assignments to help you guys kind of just keep pushing the sophistication, practicality, and details of the concept. For now, really is to just figure out the team, and we'll have more brainstorming in the coming weeks.